Development, but this is not the last time we'll hear his voice because we're already talking about new episodes that we want to do with new ideas and books and concepts. But first, let's welcome him back, our returning champion, worshipful brother Will Rothery. Welcome back to the Craftsmen Online podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been an amazing ride so far, and I'm excited for this episode.
You know what I love is traveling a lot this year around the District of Columbia and getting a chance to talk to new Masons. This is kind of our EA time of the year in the, when we record this episode and when it gets released are two different times, but we're in early spring as the taping of this episode's going down. And that's when a lot of the lodges here are doing the EA degree. So I'm meeting guys that are just coming into Masonry, and this is a great three-part series that we've done on Masonic development. It's our last one, as I mentioned. This is for our newly raised Master Masons. So, bang, you got that obligation. Welcome to the fraternity. You're trying to figure out what that Heramic legend is all about. And then somebody comes to you and says, hey, I'd like for you to get into the officer line here at the lodge. So, looking back on that moment, at least on the leadership angle, what was the first chair or office that you held in your lodge? And what was the process like of getting into that chair, Will?
Yeah, for sure. I did speak about this, I think, on the first podcast we did. So if you want to go back and listen to that, you'll get a more detailed version. But I will give a version right here. So my first role that I took on was the junior deacon chair. Just so happened there was a little gap there. I slipped my way in. I was ready to go. It was soon after, I think it was like 3-4 months after I got my Master Mason degree, and I just went all in and just carried on from there. But yeah, I was lucky enough to hop on in at that point in time and to get my seat in the chair and get the ball rolling at the end of the day.
Now, looking back, that's kind of a jump to get started in as a newly obligated Master Mason, because for one, you have a speaking part, and two, you have a pretty important responsibility sitting by that door.
Yes. Unfortunately, I don't actually, because in Canada, we actually don't do that. So we actually have an inner guard and we have a junior deacon as well. So the junior deacon basically just handles the candidate for the degree, and you have a couple words in and about the degree, and then like you prepare them behind the door, and then when they get through the door, you may or may not walk around the lodge with them, depending on what lodge you're part of. My lodge, we've typically, the junior deacon kind of goes off to the side and the senior deacon does the perambulations by himself. But if we have like two candidates, we definitely have the junior deacon. But I also know other lodges around here where the junior deacon actually does the whole thing, the whole perambulation with the senior deacon, with the candidate.
Okay.
And yeah.
Floor work can be just as, if not more, nerve-wracking than actually having speaking parts, because you start going in the wrong direction and you start hearing all the from the sidelines of people, pointing and telling you to go here or there. Is junior deacon typically the place where new brothers start in your lodge or in your jurisdiction?
No, I mean that's a. I guess it really depends on the lodge. My lodge, we probably haven't had any stewards for a while, unfortunately. But I know when I first joined the lodge, we did have a few guys who were stewards. And a couple years after I joined, we had stewards, but they were really just brethren who would just fill in on the role. There wasn't necessarily anybody who like really sat in the chair, but we definitely have had people like start at steward, then go to either we'll say inner guard or chaplain, or a lot of the times they just go right into junior deacon. But yes, I mean, a lot of the other lodges around my area, they do have a number of people, and they end up throwing people into the steward's chairs, the junior and senior steward chair. And yeah, so it's a good place to start. Don't get me wrong. Like starting at the steward's chair is good.
Yeah. And this conversation also speaks to kind of the underbelly that's exposed in Freemasonry right now with the lodges. And you said the right thing. Like most lodges don't have stewards because we just don't have people to put in those chairs. So it's very typical to go to a lodge and just see the apron and the jewel of the steward sitting in the chair, but no brother occupying the seat because he's not there that night, or the lodge just simply doesn't have one. There's just somebody whose name is on there for the paper that goes to the Grand Lodge. what this means to the newly raised Master Mason isn't the fact that, oh my gosh, you don't have any brothers that are at your lodge, you don't have people for this. It's just that our lodges are kind of evolving as the membership is happening. So while we talk about leadership, and I'm not saying, hey, you become a Master Mason and you should instantly like get into the officer line of your lodge.
Mm.
I am saying this, that if you become a Master Mason, you should start to become actively involved with some of the functions of your lodge and support it as best you can. Because in most jurisdictions, you've been able to sit in there and attend the meetings. So you're familiar with what the lodge is doing. Or you're visited enough, or you know enough of the brothers. And we've had this discussion on, I think, on the podcast so many times about the membership issue that's going around, and the joiners, and people just want to stay home and watch Netflix instead of coming to lodge. And my point on this is that you were selected by a group of men who wanted you to be active and involved in the lodge, not just a quote unquote member. So
Mm.
some of this leadership is going to come in different forms. It could be the worshipful master comes up to you seconds after getting your degree and says, hey, I'd love for you to come join the line and be a steward. That's what happened in my case. It also may come down from somebody saying, hey, we need help in the kitchen with meals, or we need help at this community event that we do, or there's a committee, or there's something, your professional trade, perhaps maybe you're an actual real operative craftsman. And they're like, we could use some help around some of the repairs with the lodge building, or you're a business professional or a lawyer or this or that. And how can you contribute to what we're doing together? So the opportunity to lead or be of service to your lodge, it's going to come in many different forms.
Mhm.
Which also kind of lends to the term servant leadership, which is what I think Freemasonry is a great example of. We have,
Mhm.
one brother who gets elected every year, sits in the East for a term. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's two, and he's literally just the servant of the Grand East, or sorry, he's just a servant of the East for that lodge, serving his brothers. What comes to your mind when you hear servant leadership and how we run our meetings or our lodges?
Oh man, yeah. Everything that we do is rooted around servant leadership. I mean, I know we're teaching leadership skills, but even more so than that, we're really we are since the very beginning. Like when you're developing your skills, going through the different chairs, you're learning these ability. You're slowly learning all these different things that are building up to you understanding servant leadership, and that's really serving your lodge, that's serving your brethren, that's serving people in your everyday life, your friends, your family. And really masonry helps open that gap, open that relationship for serving people and being a leader at the same time, because in masonry we're not just leading one another, we're leading each other as a group, we're leading one another as individuals, as men, and we're helping each other build each other up. And on top of that, the fact that it's the servant part is it's so important to understand that we are serving each other while leading each other. Where it's not just there's not too many cooks in the kitchen. We're all cooks, and we're learning how to cook together and how to work together and how to make the best opportunity that we can, not only for ourselves but for other people's, while serving each other. That's the most important thing. Like if you ever find yourself going through the line and you end up getting all the way up to master of the lodge, you become the worshipful master, you are not the the sole leader at the end of the day. You are, but you're serving your lodge, you're serving your brethren. At no point in time should you ever get totalitarian or like start ordering people around or telling people what to do. We're serving the lodge, you're serving your brethren. So when you're leading, you also have to keep that in mind. Where this is an organization that all of us are a part of, and we're all making it a better experience because of how we're leading each other and how we're leading the lodge. And so
Mm.
I think those are very important things to think about.
Now, I know I just got off of a huge rant about like why you should be active and engaged in part of your lodge. And for some guys are like, look, I just don't have the time. My work is crazy. It's very common, especially with men in their 30s. They're going back to school for more education or continuing education. They're starting a family. They've got just a lot happening. So the idea of taking on additional responsibilities for this volunteer organization that they thought they were going to be a part of, that can be tough. I
Mhm.
want to talk about how lodges help develop leadership skills with their members outside of, hey, you're a lodge officer or you're working on this committee. Um, I think some of this comes in how we do ritual and how
Mhm.
the idea of the beehive, the harmony of us all working together, um, those soft skills that we're seeking, being able to
Mhm.
communicate, mentorship that's there, thinking the thought process through decision making. Where are some places where you've seen, or maybe you've benefited from getting these skills because you go to lodge and you're active and you participate?
Yeah, I mean, I think a perfect example of that would be my job in particular. I'm a wood finisher, which not a whole lot of people probably know what that is, but I basically just paint wood, kitchens, cabinetry, so on and so forth. And I've been in charge of my department for quite a many years, 5, 6 years or something like that. But I've been at my job on and off for like 15 years. I left a couple of years ago, came back for a little while. And during that time, I've had different groups of people. You're dealing with different people. They have completely different attitudes. They have completely different ways of looking at things, so on and so forth. So you have to find a way to get along with these guys. You have to find a way to be able to lead them in a way because I'm head of my department. So when I have people under me, I've had up to 3 different people under me at one time. Right now I only have one guy under me and him and I are really close. We're good buddies. We get along really well, so it's really easy to maintain that relationship, but there's also that I kind of have to put it aside, like our friendship sometimes, and lead him and make sure that he knows what he's doing and how he's supposed to do certain things. And the way that we negotiate with people, the way that we communicate with people, it's very important that we develop these skills. And masonry is a perfect example of while you're going through the degrees or just while you're just being a brother and you're being around these guys and you're seeing these examples of leadership and these examples of servitude where we're helping each other out. And you start to understand one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in the last couple of years is one of my mentors told me that you have to treat people differently. You cannot
Mm,
treat everybody the exact same. You have to adjust the way that you talk to certain people, and you have to understand that there's a specific way of speaking to people, and that goes hand in hand with leadership, whether or not it's at your work or outside of work. Maybe you're putting a foundation together, or you're doing a fundraiser, or you're doing a cupcake sale or something like that. Like, someone has to be in charge of that stuff. Someone has to take lead. Someone has to give people structure and understanding about what's going on. You can't just have a bunch of people in the room like, oh well, what's happening next. So you kind of
mm,
need to strike up that understanding of leadership and lead. And it doesn't mean that you have to tell people what to do necessarily or tell people how to do it, as much as you're explaining it to them in a way that it's not, you're not enforcing your will on them. You're not telling them how to do it. You're explaining it, or you're doing it in a way that it's respectful. You're doing it in a way that it's easy for you guys to get along during the process. So
mm.
those are kind of examples that I can give.
Yeah, I love that you're touching on the etiquette point because unless you go to the military or some sort of finishing academy like that, and you're a man, you're not learning how to tie a tie or, as you correctly point out, how to speak to people, address them, the politenesses that come with things. You kind of lean on a father figure or a close family friend or loved one or whoever kind of filled in that role to be the mentor early on in life. Simple things like teaching you how to shave, how
Mhm.
to walk up and shake another man's hand, like the little things that you need later on as an adult. And then you get to that adult stage and you're still like, man, I've learned how to act quote unquote professionally because I see how people interact at work and I'm just kind of emulating or copying what I see. But then you come into a Masonic lodge and you have just wide variety of guys. You have brothers from another generation. They could be as old as your grandfather. You have men that are younger than you, all different walks of life, and you're interacting with them. And it's like, I hate to put it this way, but it's kind of like the sandbox for life. Like you're
Mhm.
learning through those interactions. So I jotted down 5 things, and I wanted to kind of go through them to see if you've gone through this
Mm.
and what leadership trait or skill this connects with as a Freemason, right?
Sure.
So example 1, organizing a degree.
Oh, oh man. Oh, well, I can tell you right now, we're it's not easy. It's not
Mhm.
easy necessarily to put a degree together. And I'll say that in the sense that everybody's not always on the same page. And you have to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and you have to make sure that everybody's willing to be on the same page. So one of the things that I would say is I've had difficulties in the past with getting the guys together every week for a practice with a degree coming up. It's
Mhm.
not always easy. And at the same time, it's like you can't get upset with people. You can't get frustrated about it. I mean, you can, but it's probably not going to help, because at the end of the day, we're all this we don't we're not being paid to be here. Nobody is
Mhm.
being paid to be here. So at the end of the day, this is all voluntary. And you have to
Yep.
treat people with respect when it's voluntary. You can't get upset with people when they don't come to the practice. I mean, if you try to do 3, 4 practices in a row and one of the senior deacon isn't showing up for every practice, well, you have a problem. Your degree's not
Mhm.
going to happen if he's not prepared and ready to go. So you got to be really careful about how you're handling those situations. You have to be very open and willing to work with the guys. You have to be able to discuss times, dates that work with them, and every week it might change. And sometimes you have to make adjustments, you have to make slight changes, and you might be messaging 10 different guys or more to get ready for a
Mm.
degree. Even more so than that, I put together a Master Mason degree last year, and at our outdoor lodge, and man, there was like 15 components all together, and I put together every single one of them. And that's
Yeah.
calling people, phoning people, messaging people, uh, emailing people constantly every day
Yep.
throughout the week, trying to get it all together, getting everything figured out. And these are things that you don't really think about when you're coming up, when you're going through the
Mhm.
degrees, when you're coming up through the lodge. It's just like, oh yeah, this is the next step. Oh, and this is what happens. And then you get to master mace, or you get to become a master of the lodge, and it's much different.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think the organizing a degree part is really what puts you to the test. You run
Oof.
through it. As you said, like you're trying to herd 12, and depends on the jurisdiction. It could be
Mhm.
12 to 15 people that are a part of this cast. Conductors, people that are handling the various parts. You got to make sure that the room, like your organization skills better be top notch, because if you make one mismove, everyone on the team is going to let you know, and it's like this whole house of cards could come crumbling down. And really what you're working for, as you pointed out, like you're trying to keep the team's focus on, hey, we want to put together the best possible degree for
Mhm.
the brother or the candidate that's going to get this honor. So like let's make sure we're there. So you're a little bit of a cheerleader too. Like that's a tough one.
Mhm.
You kind of touched on the second thing I was going to ask you about, which is emailing members, which is a
Oh.
different conversation than the text messages that we have together, where when I send emails for work, I often reread them several times, especially depending on the department head level of who I'm communicating with. I'm not just checking for spelling errors. I want to make sure that the point that I'm trying to make is clear, that it's
Mhm.
professional, it's respectful, and they understand what I need from them so that I can finish a task or get their input for a project. Same thing when it comes to talking with brothers.
Mhm.
You have to be very careful in that situation. So here's the third example I was going to give you. I teased this one before we started recording, so you might have had a little time to think about it. Introducing guests at the lodge.
Oof. Yeah, no, I mean, it's an extremely important thing to do. I mean, so before the meeting even starts, you wanna take a quick look around the room. You wanna make sure your senior warden is on things as well. You wanna constantly remind them, make sure that they're, looking out for new guys that you've probably never seen before. And I would assume that by senior warden, master mason, you're probably pretty familiar of the guys who are new and who aren't to your lodge. At the very least, you got to go around, and maybe you might end up talking to a couple guys you don't recognize and asking them, hey, is this your first time coming to the lodge? That's the one thing, first off, right off the bat, that you should constantly, every single time that you're coming to lodge and you're having a regular meeting or an emergent meeting, one of the first things that you should be doing as a senior warden or a worshipful master, or both, literally, is take a look around the room. Make sure that you've figured out who's new, who isn't. Or if you don't recognize the guy, go up and ask him anyways, because that's always a great way. You never want to open lodge up and then be like, hey, is there any first time visitors? And then get random guy pops up and you're like, hey, random brother, where are you from? What lodge? Like, it works, but I mean, really, you want to address the guy beforehand. You want to get his title, his rank, where he comes from, what lodge, where his mother lodge is, maybe, what his connection to the lodge might be. Maybe he had a brother, or maybe his dad was part of the lodge, or maybe, a friend of his used to be a member of your lodge and they passed away years ago, or whatever the case may be. You want to figure that stuff out, and you want to ask these questions of these guys before you get into lodge, because then you kind of end up looking like you have your pants around your ankles when you're when you're asking these guys to randomly stand up and, hey, can you tell us your name and your rank and what lodge you're from and where you came from? I mean, that's not always the worst thing ever, especially when maybe you have a degree going on and there's lots of working things going on beforehand. You're trying to make sure the candidate's all prepared properly, trying to make sure the senior deacon, or the junior deacon's doing what he's supposed to be doing. Making sure all your parts and pieces are all in the spots that they're supposed to be, all your guys are ready to go, so on and so forth. But those are all good things to look at before you're introducing guys. And don't mess up their rank. Do not mess up the rank, because that is one of the most important things in Freemasonry, is not obtaining those ranks or having those ranks, but being mindful of the people who worked really hard to get those ranks. I know at the end of the day, it's, I don't care if someone calls me a worshipful brother or not. I attained the rank, sure. But there are some guys who worked really, really hard to be very worshipfuls or right worshipfuls, and they want that. They want to be addressed as that. And it's only right and it's only honorable for us to do that to them, or for them.
This is a joke. I'm just going to preface this, but to the part of the honorific, when I earned the title of right worshipful, and with my wife, I'm like, so it's a right worshipful. She's like, oh, you're right. And I'm like, no, you could stop right there. That's all you have to say every time I walk in the room is you're right. That's all I want to hear from you, honey. No. But for our viewers that are watching the live stream of this podcast recording, for a newly obligated Master Mason, I'm going to show you the most important working tool that you can buy for yourself. It is a pen. We don't carry ink pens anymore. Go on Amazon, treat yourself, buy a nice pen, put that in the breast pocket of your suit on the inside. You'll thank me later when you have to go to a lodge and something as simple as signing the book that you visited the lodge. If you are asked to sit as senior deacon or whatever the chair is in the jurisdiction you're in that handles the introductions that night for the worshipful master, you can write people's name. This tool, these things that are like $1 in some instances, lifesavers for Masons. So make sure to carry one of those. Okay. I've got 2 more examples of leadership opportunities and skills that you get, those soft skills that we're so craving for in life. Here's example number 4, saying the prayer at dinner.
Oh, wow. The prayer at dinner. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a really important thing that we do. I think, having non-denominational prayers before dinner, I think, is a very important thing. It really can get people who have never done toasts before can literally pull that one out of nowhere. You can go and look some up. You can go find them. Especially just toasts in general, just learning how to do toasts were one of the first things that I did as a Mason. Like, as soon as you get your EA, a lot of the times most lodges will have you kind of give a little toast at the end of it, or kind of give your words of wisdom at the end of getting the degree or whatever. But those first couple times that you're going to the repass and you have to do these toasts. A really good one to start with would be grace. It's grace is a really important thing. Obviously, we're all there because we're all, we all believe in a higher power. We all believe in the grand architect, the great architect, so on and so forth. And so it is. I think it's a really good thing that we implement that in right before we even eat, before we discuss eating. That's the one of the first things that we do, and I think it's an important part of dinner, of getting together, of creating that harmony in the room right before we all sit down and eat. And it's a good
Yeah.
way
And
to
I would,
get into doing toasts too.
yeah. And for some of us, it's like the first public speaking.
Mhm.
I remember, as an EA, you gave the example at dinner, and they're like, Brother RC, can you lead us in the prayer for tonight? And I got up and I'm like, I've never done this before. Like, I don't even know what to say. Ugh. And thankfully, one of the older brothers reached into his wallet and handed me a little piece of paper, and I opened it up, and there was a prayer that was printed on there. And I just read the prayer, and I thanked him, and I gave it back to him, and he said, "Here's a tip: always have a prayer in your wallet." Well, it's 2025. I don't even carry a wallet anymore, but I can tell you on my cell phone, I have prayers because there are times when they need a chaplain for the night, and you get to go to the altar, and that's a really important thing to say that prayer, and you don't want to be sitting there going so a simple thing to have ahead of time. Okay,
Mhm.
last leadership example that sometimes gets overlooked as a master mason, and I can't wait, I got to make sure I cross this off so I can look at your face when I say this: cleaning up after dinners.
Oof. I mean, it's a necessary. It's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. I can't count how many times, even as master of the lodge, I've come out of the lodge, finish cleaning the lodge up, and then go out and then start cleaning up the tables and stuff. Although we pay people to come in and do our cleanup,
Mm,
we don't make them do that. Like we go in and we clean everything up. A ton of members. It's not even just the stewards that are hanging out after dinner or after the repast or whatever. It's everyday guys. It's the it's the secretary, it's the deacons, it's the worshipful master, the wardens. Everybody should be participating in that because I think it's a good habit to keep, first of all. And the other thing is, man, it's depressing when you go to leave lodge and everything's still on the table and everything's still stacked up and nobody's made any effort. It's just like everybody's so worked up about, oh, I gotta go home, I gotta,
mm,
oh, lodge is done, we can get going now, go. So, and it's like, come on, like, take a few
right.
seconds. I can't count how many times, even in the last couple months, I've just come in and I told myself, okay, right after lodge is done, because we actually have our repasses before our lodge meeting. But even after, I'll get out of lodge, I'll have a quick bite, and I'll get out of here. That never happens. You have a
Mm-mm.
bite, you chat with people for a little bit, and then people start rolling out, and then you just get up and you start cleaning up. And because
Yeah.
it's part of the job, it's part of what we do. Like, yeah, we could leave it for the guy who comes in and cleans up, but at the end of the day, like, that's not making us improve in any way, shape, or form. That's not us
Yeah.
just avoiding that task that we should be doing. Like, really, at the end of lodge, go clean up a little bit, and then it's not so much of a cleanup task for the next guy.
Yeah. And even as a newly raised master mason, and that's the whole point for this podcast episode, I'm sure you're tuning in and saying, what does cleaning up after lodge dinners have anything to do with lodge leadership or service or legacy? And I'm like, dude, you'd be surprised. It's the little
Mhm,
things. I always tell people when I offer to help and they're like, oh, no, you don't have to help. I'm like, no, no, no. Once a steward, always a steward. Like, where
mhm,
can I help? If anything, and they say it's their opportunity to say, no, we got that covered, but thank you for offering. It's like you
mhm,
wouldn't go to a friend's house and make a mess and just get up and walk away from it. You really shouldn't kind of carry that behavior into your own lodge. God forbid
mhm,
if you actually go visit another lodge, it just looks bad, it reflects poorly on you,
mhm,
and it's kind of like people look at you like, well, they must think that that behavior is okay where they're from. It's like, no, 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 don't let that
mhm,
happen. Do want to get into the service part of what's available, because hey, I've got my master mason degree now. I can go join all these other concordant bodies, I can get involved with all of these things. So from local breakfast fundraisers to coat and toy drives that we do in the winter, to some of the larger nonprofit entities that exist around senior healthcare needs or just taking care of elderly folks in the community. Freemasonry, if you love charity, they've got plenty of service organizations that you can be a part of. Um, when it comes to that, is there an example of a brother or a story that you're aware of where you were like, man, I'm really proud to know that this person was a Freemason and they did this and they were either part of my lodge or part of my jurisdiction. And I was just like, it's so, when I think of charity, relief, and truth, like this person took that to the next level.
Hmm. I have two examples, and I will try to keep them as brief as possible. So the first one that I'm going to touch on is a lodge in my district. It's called Concord Lodge. Amazing group of guys. I actually have a really good relationship with a large chunk of their lodge. I'd probably say like 60 or 70% of their lodge I have good relationships with. But the last couple years here, I think like 2 years ago or so, they actually became part of an initiative in their city, that's called 100 Good Men or something like that, something along those lines, or 100 Men or something like that. And what it
Mm,
is all these different um, businesses and organizations get together. I think they meet every quarter. So 4 times a year they get together and they meet. And every time they meet, they all pitch in like $100 each or something like that. I can't remember if it's like I think it's 100, and they have a number of members. It's not just 100 people. It's actually like 100 groups, and there's like 2 to 3 people in every group. And so I don't remember if it's every group or every person brings $100, but I'm pretty sure it's every group. So they end up like basically accumulating like a couple $1,000 at every one of these meetings. And then they sit down and they go through a list of charities that they want to donate to, and they all vote on which charity to donate to. And whatever gets the most amount of votes, that's what they donate the charity to at that meeting. So that's 4 times a year that they get together. That's the community. That's businesses, that's different organizations. And so all these different groups have come together to make a big difference in their city. And honestly,
mhm.
that when I first heard about them talking about that stuff, that is phenomenal. That's not something that you find very often. And they're not in a big city or anything like that. Like it's but the fact that they're out there doing that stuff, that's just phenomenal. Like the first time when I heard them talking about that for the first time, I got goosebumps in the middle of the lodge. I was just like, man,
That's cool.
you guys are doing amazing work. And the crazy
Mm,
thing is like, yeah, they're doing it as a lodge, but at the same time, it's the guys who are going out of their way, those 2, 3 guys that are going to those meetings, they're going out of their way to prepare themselves for those meetings, and bringing all that information back to the lodge. That's incredible. That's amazing. The fact that they are able to be a part of something like that, it's great. It shows the charity and the relief at its best part in Freemasonry, and it's showing us how to do those things. The other thing that I would like to bring up would be actually part of my own lodge. And I wouldn't say it's specifically one brother. There is one brother who definitely took a little bit more lead on it, but my lodge kind of helped out. And what it was about 2 years ago or so, we acquired a brother, a right worshipful brother from Saskatchewan, who was a past district deputy grand master. And he was just a phenomenal guy. And he just, everywhere he went, he always made friends. Everyone loved him. He came and moved here to BC, and he actually moved to my town. And I guess he lived here for a little while, and I didn't join a lodge or anything like that. But after a little while of him being here, he ended up suffering from a severe stroke, and
mm,
he's never been the same since then. His speech is a little bit muffled at times. Like he's not always on the ball. He has really hard time with his mobility. He basically needs a walker or a cane to get around, and even at that, he has a really hard time getting in and out of cars and so on and so forth. So he's actually got a really great support system. So when this all happened, he didn't really have a whole lot of money. He didn't have like very much. He doesn't have like any family here. The closest family he has is, I think he has a daughter down like 3 hours from here. So
Hmm.
what we started doing is, one of the guys specifically started going through this process of getting him uh, the care that he needed in the home that he was at. And so for a while there, he wasn't getting any extra services or anything like that done. And so what he did was he went out of his way to come to lodge and talk to us. Like John, the guy who's helping the brother who had a stroke, he came to lodge and was really like, hey, I really think that we should do something for Barry. I think Barry deserves to, he's dedicated a lot of his life to masonry. He's been a right worshipful brother. He's a phenomenal guy, and I heard nothing but great things about him. And then this whole situation happened where he needed extra help. So he went out of his way. He found caretakers. He found people to come in weekly, to come and help him clean his place up, to help him prepare meals, stuff like that. That is amazing. The fact that I was able to be even a bit a part of that, to try to help figure that out, and as a lodge to be able to pay those bills for that brother, to be able to help him out in a time of need where he needs some extra help. And he's slowly getting better, and he's getting to a point where he can take over himself. And I think they're only going in bi-weekly for cleaning and stuff now. But
Hmm.
those types of stories right there. That's why we're Masons. That's why we get taught these lessons about charity and relief, is because one of these days you don't know when that's going to be you. You don't know when that's going to be your brother. You don't know when that's going to be your close friend, family member,
Hmm.
so on and so forth. So just remember those types of things. Like, we teach this stuff for a good reason.
Yeah, and I love your examples because it's not always about giving money. Giving money is important, and we can be very generous as a craft. It's one of the things I love about hearing the beneficent work that we do. But then I'm also equally impressed, if not more, when I hear stories of, guys just coming around and helping people, because I'm like, gosh, God forbid, if Freemasonry didn't exist, what would this person do? Like, who would be there for this? And yeah, we step in and we do it because we love that person, but we also know it's the right thing to do. And
Right.
in a world today where people are just so focused on themselves, like, it's cool to know that there's this band of brothers that just is out there looking out for each other, and all of those in between. All right, so we've talked a lot about, on our last episode here, closing out the Masonic leadership service and legacy part. We're going to get to legacy in a second, but just to kind of catch our listener up, so you're a newly raised Master Mason. We've talked about some of the opportunities for soft skills to exist. If you're looking for leadership skills, sure, there's the officer line, but if you're like, there's other ways that you can help, even cleaning up after dinner, a simple thing like that.
Mhm.
Maybe some best practices to think about: carrying a pen around in your jacket pocket isn't going to hurt. Knowing a prayer, always a good idea. And introducing yourself and others that come to visit your lodge. We've talked about being able to step up and fill in other parts of your lodge that there is a need for things. Will just gave some fantastic examples about how we come together as a craft to serve others. So I want to close it out with this last point, kind of the legacy. And I know you're like, whoa, my Masonic story just began. Like, I'm not ready to start getting into legacy mode here, but you can. And it's a simple step that you can start as early as today.
Mhm.
You can become a mentor and pass that knowledge on to the next guy. And I know that kind of sounds like a tall task, right? Because you're like, dude, I just got raised. What do I know? Well, Will, what does this guy know? How can he be a mentor to the next brother?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that you develop during your 3 degrees, even just be after being a master mason. Like, maybe you might want to wait until after you're a master of the lodge to really start mentoring people, but that doesn't mean that you can't pass that knowledge on to the next person. Specifically, like, once you have the 3 degrees, you can go out and learn pretty much whatever. You can go and read any type of literature. And so that gives you this whole other aspect of Freemasonry, and you can pass that on to other brethren who are coming up. Like, you might not even be that much further along. If you just became a master mason, you have a little bit of an understanding of the 3 degrees and the hieramic legend and all that other stuff. And there's a brother who's coming up who's maybe just got his EA degree, and he doesn't quite understand, what it was about the first degree. And you might be able to give them some sort of insight. You might be able to pass on a bit of knowledge to him, a bit of more understanding, so that he can kind of grasp what he went through a little bit better. Like right now, a perfect example is I'm dealing with a candidate right now, and I'm mentoring a candidate, and man, I feel like I'm cheating with him because he's just flying through everything. He's 26 years old, and he's just got such a mind that's so quick, so fast. I've met with him twice now, and he's ready for his prove up now. And so he's proving up this Monday. And the amount of things that we can add to each other's Masonic experiences, that's really what makes this a way better experience, is helping your fellow brother a bit more in understanding. It's the same thing with like the allegory. We don't talk about it very much. But if you can sit down with a brother who just got his EA degree and he doesn't fully understand the allegory of that degree, you can help start breaking down some of those barriers. Or even, he just got his fellowcraft degree. Maybe he didn't understand the middle chamber lecture, and you kind of have a bit better of an understanding about it. Talk, explain it, explain the symbology of it, explain the allegory behind it. And those are great aspects to kind of get into. You don't have to be really far along to learn a little bit extra, or to teach the guy that's coming up as well. We're all here to learn from each other. We're all here to gain little bits of insight from each other. Like, if we're not here building each other up, then how are we getting built up? If we're not passing this knowledge off to the next guy, then how are we ever going to improve and continue to improve? Like, and especially when you're talking about legacy, like looking at your Masonic career and figuring out like what you want to do. Like, your first year of being a Master Mason, you might not even know where you're going to go to at the end of it, but you have some awesome guys in your lodge that have been there to give you information, give you knowledge, really help you to understand, what the degrees are all about, what kind of lessons are being taught. Those are all things that any level of Mason can teach another level of Mason, especially if you have an understanding and they just don't. And they're just like clueless to, these deeper meanings in the degrees. Even our tools, I know we have explanations for our tools, but there's further explanations for each one of those tools. And so you kind of got to go out and you got to find it. You got to talk to people. You got to, you got to talk up mentors. You got to, but those are all aspects and parts of why we're here, why we're doing this, is to improve ourselves and help improve others.
Yeah, that's a solid point. Like, you don't have to have white hair or no hair like me to be perceived. Age doesn't equate to being a mentor, as you pointed out. Like, it could be just being the guy, and a lot of it happens when you're the newly raised Master Mason of the lodge, and then there's visitors that come. They're like, "Oh, well, go talk to this guy. He just went through this whole process," and people are like, "Oh, cool." And you can kind of recall, like, yeah, literally 6 months ago, I was in your spot, or however long ago it was. The other thing I think that's helpful too is if you're like, I really want to help, but maybe I don't know all this. I don't have none of us do. And anyone that claims to have all the answers, they don't. But there can be simple things you do, like as a mentor getting started, which is helping brothers with ideas on how to learn the ritual, study habits, just being there to listen, to be that wall that they bounce off of and they need someone to work with. And you're just going through the book and you're providing good feedback instead of critical feedback. Those are ways that you can be a mentor without even realizing that you're doing it. And again, as a newly raised Master Mason, it's just another piece that's out there for you as you're like, okay, well, now what can I do with this thing? I think the other thing we didn't get to tonight, but we've talked about it enough in the podcast in general, and I'm sure, Worshipful, you've got some ideas on this, is getting out and traveling. That should really be something that you look to do, is getting out of your lodge, not only to just represent your lodge in your jurisdiction, but also to go visit these other lodges and come back with maybe some ideas, that things that you see working there that maybe we could give this a try.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that one.
Cool.
Yeah, that's all I got for you.
I mean, sometimes it's also like, programs and speakers are just stuff that they do where you're like, wow, I saw this. And again, sometimes we just get too into our own lane, and, the brothers that go out and travel, I think as a Master Mason, you should make it a goal for yourself as a newly raised Master Mason. Hey, I'm going to go visit one lodge this year, another lodge with somebody else. If you're not doing it already, just try to get out there. That would be my key thing.
And I fully agree with you. I mean, you go look at our past episodes, and I can't count how many times I've beaten that over the head about going out and traveling and meeting new brothers and expanding your relationships, so on and so forth. Just go see other lodges. Not even just in the sense of just going to meet new people and on all that. Go look at how other degrees are done. Go look at how other lodges work. Especially if you want to go through the line and you want to become a worshipful master one day, go see how other worshipful masters run their lodge. That's a very important thing to do. And yeah, but I think literally one of the most important things you can do as a Mason is travel. On friendship, on learning and understanding, everything.
Yeah. I always remind my guys, I'm like, dude, you guys got to get out of the lodge. Remember how much you wanted to be a part of this? No, think about it. Like, go back to when you made those first, not before you even were obligated as an entered apprentice, when you were just visiting the lodge and they were teasing you along with like, oh, well, if you come back to dinner next time, we can take that next step and you're like, oh, they ever going to let me join? And then you get comfortable, right? And it's like, no. Now you have that passport now. You can go anywhere and start experiencing all this is what you wanted. Like, go celebrate it. Do a victory lap. Have a good time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. It's funny that you said that, because I have a guy right now who's looking to be a candidate, and I've been stringing him along for about 2 months now. And if he comes to a couple more meetings, I'll actually give him an application form. He seemed pretty keen,
Nice.
so I think he's going to stick around. So.
He's the keeper then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hopefully we've answered some of your questions or provided some light on what's available to you now as a newly raised Master Mason. Of course, you can always come back to this podcast and find other episodes that we've done on things that are available to you. But we wanted to leave you, newly minted brother, in a good spot. For this one, we're going to close it out. And thanks so much, Worshipful Brother Will Rothery. We'll close out this series, but I know we're going to see you again soon.
Oh, I'm sure we'll be getting something cooking going pretty soon here. But I much appreciate the fact that you helped bring this series to life. And I think we did a pretty decent job at trying to explain things on a level that's not too insanely complicated. Nice.
All right. Whew. We're good.
Well, that was the longest one we've done.
Well, it was a good one.
That was a good one.
The 5 things in the middle, as silly as those sound, I'm like, no, those are all examples. People don't think about it,